Hey everyone, I'm back. It's me, Flipper's Paragraph, with another review, this time of the 1985 Jûzô Itami film, Tampopo. So, I first heard about this film when I was going through the Criterion Channel's most loved films. Like, they have a category called, all-time favorites or whatever. And I was going through it and I saw some, usual suspects, like Seventh Seal and Seven Samurai. But then I saw a movie that I actually didn't know about, which is odd because I go through Criterion pretty much every day. And I saw a movie that I didn't recognize at all. I'd never even heard of the title. And it was Tampopo. And I was curious about it because it said it was a Japanese film, and the Criterion description said that it was a Western about a noodle shop, which immediately intrigued me. So I went out and I saw it, and I loved it. I thought it was very, very good, and I think that it might be one of the best Japanese films I've ever seen in my life. So let me go over the plot real quick. The plot is essentially about these two milk truck drivers who stumble upon a little noodle shop called Lai Lai Noodles. And after a quick brawl with the patrons of the noodle shop, they go and decide to help the lady named Tampopo, who owns the noodle shop, to turn it into a real legitimate noodle shop. And that's the entire film. So let's get right into it. The film opens on a movie theater. This entire movie... I should preface with saying that this entire movie's big theme is, food in general. It's just about food and about cultural aspects of food. It's probably one of the better food films ever made. It's just surrounding food. And so the film opens on a movie theater. And this couple walking into the movie theater and talking about how they hate people eating popcorn during the movies because it's so loud. And there's a guy behind them eating popcorn, and so the main character, who ends up to be a nobody, just gets up and goes and screams at the guy eating popcorn. And it's jarring, for sure, but it's very unique and it's very funny. This movie is remarkably funny. It's probably one of the funniest movies I've ever rated on this channel, because I only rate dark, depressing dramas all the time, forever. So they have that opening, and then they immediately move into the second scene about this ramen master teaching this pupil how to make good ramen, and how to eat ramen properly, I should say. And it's another really funny scene that prefaces the actual story of the film. And all these prefaces just lead us into the themes, the Western themes. This is as much a Western as Blazing Saddles is a Western, by the way. It doesn't take place in the West. There's not a single gun. There's one cowboy hat. And the entire way that it's a Western is if you imagine the plot of a Western, a man goes into a bar and saves the damsel in distress and helps her turn her bar into a legitimate business before he finally fights off against the big bad. Then this is a Western in that way, where it's about a ramen shop where the same thing happens. So the Western themes in this movie are very, very effective. And they're very well done, and they're very clever, and it's very, very funny just to think about it. Imagine a man going into a bar and just ordering, ramen, and, instead of just going, my usual scotch or whatever, he's just my usual pork ramen, and then they bring him just a bowl of ramen. That's a funny concept. And this movie executes its comedy in such a unique way. It's so stark and so deadpan. It's like a Wes Anderson movie. And it's so unique, and it's so much fun. This is another movie where it's just a lot of fun. And I know I said that about Paprika, and I want it to be clear, I don't just give movies high scores because they're fun. I give them higher scores if they're well made and happen to be fun. Shame is not as well made as Tampopo, in my opinion. and that's why I'm going to give Tampopo a higher score than Shame. So the movie also has, in terms of its cinematography, these big, vibrant, beautiful colors that just span the whole circumference of the cinematography. It's beautiful cinematography, honestly. It's nothing like super impressive in terms of the angles or the movement of the camera, but just the colors by themselves are very, very inviting and warm, and it leads into the themes of the film very, very well. It's very witty, it's very clever, it's very funny, it's very unique, and it has this sort of stories within stories structure where it's like you'll have the opening, and then you'll have the second scene, and then you'll have the third scene where the story finally kicks off. And within this main story, there's a bunch of vignettes that are happening that all relate to food. Like there's this old woman who squeezes, who has an obsession with squeezing food at the grocery store. There's a man and his wife or his girlfriend who are trying to do erotic play with food. And those scenes are actually very sensual, except for one with an egg that is very funny. But there's one with whipped cream that's pretty good. There's in the same scene, I'm laughing just thinking about it. In the same scene, the man takes a shrimp and puts it in a bowl of water and then puts it on her stomach area, her midriff, and then the shrimp starts bouncing around, and they're trying to get erotic pleasure out of that. And it's just another hilarious scene, and all of the movie is just so funny. It's so funny, and the comedic timing is just perfect. Between the writing, the acting, the editing, all the comedic timing is just, it's just perfect. It's perfect. And it's never too fast, it's never too slow. It's always exactly as fast as it needs to be. It's always exactly as slow as it needs to be. It's always edited in the best way possible. The editing in this movie is fantastic. It's so good. It's such funny editing. There's a scene where the guy's eating ramen and Tampopo is being bullied by some guy, so he just takes the little swirl looking thing from ramen and he just flings it, and then it's just a shot of the guy looking at him dead in the eyes, and then the thing just flicks onto him right here. And it's so funny. This movie is, I might be overhyping. Don't think I'm overhyping it, because it is really enjoyable. But, take my opinion with as much grain of salt as you want to. The acting, in my opinion, is pretty great. It's nothing extraordinary. You're not going to win an Oscar from it. But you have these talented comedic actors. You have Ken Watanabe, who is doing an amazing job. You have the actress playing Tampopo, who's doing a great job. And they're just so perfectly embodying their characters in every moment. Their delivery is spot on. Their comedic timing is perfect. Everything about their performance fits so well for this movie. And that's what I think a performance should be. It never has to be the best performance in the world. It always has to be the perfect performance for the movie you're making. Wes Anderson movies don't have exactly the best acting ever because it's very deadpan, but it's perfect for a Wes Anderson movie. You know what I mean? And this movie has that perfect acting for what it is, which is very well done. It's very stylistic. It's very inviting. It's very communal, if that makes sense. It feels like a community of people made this movie, not just a crew, but a family of people made this movie, because everybody, it just feels like such a close-knit film, and it feels like everybody who made it is so caring of everybody else. It feels like a very caring, very warm film. The directing also has a lot of vision. I very much respect Jûzô Itami. If you haven't read up about his story on Wikipedia, read about it, because he's lived a hard-ass life, and his death is extremely sad. But he made movies with so much passion, despite what everyone else told him. He just made whatever he wanted, when he wanted, and I respect that so much. I so respect this director, and he has so much vision, and he executed it so well in this movie. It's a very, very well-directed film. It's an extremely well-directed film. it's so lovable and so charming and so endearing and so agreeable as a film. Like, it's just so warm watching this movie. It's like a warm experience, if that makes sense. It's just this mirage of just pleasant feelings coming at you one after the other. And that's not to say that there aren't stakes and there aren't sad moments, because there are, and those moments are very well executed as well. But most of the movie is this fun little adventure about a noodle shop. And you can't really get more, like, fun than that. It's a comedy about making a noodle shop trying to be the best it can be. It's like fucking Kung Fu Panda. Like, it's like a better Kung Fu Panda. Every scene has some witty comedic element to it. Every character has some witty comedic elements to it. Every performance, every line of dialogue, everything is just so clever and just so well done and so perfect for what it's trying to be. This movie is perfect at what it's trying to be. And in that case, I can't give it higher praise than that. There are some also fucking sweet production design on this. Like, I assume that they built the Tampopo noodle shop, and it is very well built. Like, it is extremely well done. And the makeup and the hair and the costumes, they're also so inviting and so interesting. And everything about the production design is just so well done. It's so well done. From the sets, to the costumes, to the hair and makeup, everything about it is just remarkably done. And it is perfect for what it's trying to be. And it works on 100 different levels. And it's just such a raw and pure expression of love for food, this movie is. Like, of course, there's always, like, that cliche, like, oh my god, I love food so much type of shit. And everybody has to deal with that. But beyond that, there is that, like, cultural aspect of food that it, like, draws people in and it brings people together. And that's what this movie feels like. This movie feels like Food, the movie. Because in the same way that food brings people together, I feel like this movie could bring a lot of people together to just enjoy it and be, like, a family, a close-knit group of friends, or just a community, and enjoy this film. There are also some interesting editing choices. Like, there's a lot of wipes that, like, if you know what a wipe is, it's just when the screen goes, like, shoo, and it transitions into another scene. But the wipes are, like, windshield wiper wipes, because they go, like, shoo, like that. It's a very interesting choice. And I think it works pretty well for what it's trying to be, again. And it gives the movie this, like, sort of classical sense, sort of like how Star Wars feels a little dated because of the editing. And this movie just, it gives it a real 80s nostalgia to it. And also another thing about it is, back to the editing, it feels a little fast-paced sometimes, like a little too fast-paced. I would wish for some of the plot points to just linger a little longer and just let them breathe and let them exist in the world. And just give us some time to appreciate every scene, but every scene moves by so quickly that we don't really have time to appreciate every single scene as long as I would like to. Which is something that goes down to editing, but I think it's not the biggest problem in the world, personally. I think I had enough time to appreciate the scene. I just wish I had a little bit more time, because then I would have gotten everything I could get out of them. There's also such great casting in this movie. Like, every face in the movie is memorable. Every expression that they make, like, huh, or whatever, is just so interesting, and it's so enjoyable. Like, the casting in this movie, the cast is just fantastic. Like, between their acting and the actual casting themselves, they do such a good job just being these characters, just being these people. Like, they don't even feel like characters. They just feel like regular people trying to start up a noodle shop. Except for Ken Watanabe's character. He feels extremely like a character just because of the cowboy hat and a bunch of other, like, production design choices on him. But beyond that, like, he does a wonderful job. He does a very fun job. Everybody does, like, a very, very good job. And the casting director did a very good job selecting interesting faces, interesting people, good actors. Like, it's good casting. This is good casting. It's also super Japanese. I don't know. I don't know how else to describe it. In my notes, it just says super Japanese, which I know what I meant by that. It just has that style and that emotion that comes from Japan very often with these live action comedies. It feels like a Chinese comedy. It feels like a Japanese, a Korean comedy. It feels like an Asian comedy. And it does have that sort of like goofballish nature about it. But it's done in a way where it's not like stupid. It's not the Three Stooges. It's more like a Mel Brooks movie where like every gag is well thought out and everything. Like everything about this movie is well thought out, in my opinion. It certainly seems that way. There's also some very creative choices in the soundscape of the film, which is something that I haven't yet talked about. The sound design is extraordinary in this film. The sound effects, I think in my notes it says horn, but I could be misreading that. There's like a horn sound effect that happens at one point that is very comedically done. Oh wait, I remember what it is. I remember what I was talking about. When they're eating the noodles, there's a part where they slurp up the noodles and there's like a sound, like a slide whistle or like a deep slide whistle sound. And it's a very creative choice. I'm not sure why they made that choice, but it was a very fun choice, and it made the film a little bit more interesting. It was almost like if you've ever seen Bo Burnham's Inside. It's like that scene where Bo Burnham's talking to the camera, and then he pulls out a knife, and then he keeps talking, and then he doesn't do anything with the knife. The knife was just to get your attention. It kind of feels like that, because the slurp sound being replaced by like a horn or whatever it was, I don't even remember at this point, but being replaced by something silly doesn't really accomplish anything besides getting your attention, and it does that very, very well. So it's these interesting choices that are being made that just give the film a lot of its flavor. One main criticism that I have with the movie is that it lacked for me that quality that I give to my 100%, which is that I feel like I looked at something different in my life. Like, one of my favorite movies, Breathless, made me look at love in a completely different way. And another great movie like Her made me look at love a completely different way. There Will Be Blood made me look at like power and religion in a different way. And this food does make me look at food in a little bit of a different way. But it lacks that like weightiness of like, I feel like my life is different because I watched this movie. It doesn't have that feeling, which is why I can't give it like a perfect score or whatever. But it does have that sense of core, it has that sense of themes and identity, and it's just the magic, transformative power of food and how it can bring people together, tear people apart, and just reunite a community, reunite people, and it's a beautiful thing to watch. It truly is. My one main criticism, also, beyond the fact that it didn't change my life, which is like, I can't expect that from a movie 99% of the time. Sometimes I can, but in this instance, it's a little comedy from the 80s. I wasn't expecting this to like change my life or whatever. But another main criticism is that Tampopo has a kid, and the kid barely does anything in the whole movie. Like, the kid appears in the first scene and in the last scene and in like two scenes in the middle, but he seems like he could have been an interesting part of the story, but unfortunately he's kind of left to waste. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Tampopo. I loved it. It's a fun Japanese comedy. It's got so much heart. It's got so much grit and so much emotion and so much power behind it. It's got so much endearing quality, so much charm, so much smooth, silky dialogue, so much smooth, silky cinematography, great additions of food, great themes, great core, great messages. Fantastic film. I loved it. I'm going to give Tampopo a 97%, which rates it a tiny bit higher than Paprika, making it my highest rated movie of all time as of now. I'm sure that record will be beaten soon when we get our first 100%. But until then, let's just keep doing these reviews, guys. So, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for being here. Thank you so much for watching. Don't be afraid to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what I should review next. Come on, tell me what I should review next. You know you want to see me review something. You know you do. What's your favorite movie? Tell me in the comments. I'll review it and tear it to shreds. So, thank you all so much for watching. Don't be afraid to like, subscribe, share, comment. Don't forget to look at the Patreon. And that's going to be it for me, guys. Thank you all so much for coming. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.